With videos for applique, I always struggle. It's a chicken and an egg issue. Do I show you how to sew it out first so you understand why it's set up the way that it is, or do I show you how to set it up so you understand why the machine stops? So I would recommend watching both the color sequence and the sewing, and then in either order, but then watching it again so one makes the other make a little bit more sense. I'm going to start off by kind of having things appear in Design Shop as if I was sewing them. So I know this is how to run the machine, but seeing it in Design Shop I think makes everything else make a little bit more sense. And then we'll set up the color sequence in the OS, and then in another video we'll watch it sew out. So on screen I have in Design Shop the applique design that we are going to set up the color sequence for and sew. I have it with a vector element to act as the fabric that we're going to put down. And then I have each separate element over on the side. So I'm going to make all of these go away. I'm just going to hide them. And then the first thing that I'm going to show is the first color. So I have these broken out by colors. And the first thing that sews typically with an applique is a locator stitch. And that locator stitch is just the outline of the material that you're going to be laying down. That way you know where to put it on your fabric. So typically after that, in between these two colors, and it's very important that you have the locator and what is considered a tack down stitch, where it goes around the outside and attaches the material. That's the next bit that sews down. It's very important that those are separate colors. That way when you go to the machine you can put in an applique command that will make the machine wait for you. So it'll stop, feed the frame out, and wait for you so you can place that material down. So first is the locator stitch, then I would lay the material down, and I'm just showing the vector to essentially lay material down. And then we sew the tack down stitch, and there are different styles of tack down stitches. This one is a tackle stitch. This would be kind of a common look to end here if it was on the back of a jersey or something like that. It's a tackle twill kind of look. If you want a more finished look, you can follow that up with a satin stitch. Now personally, I typically make the tack down stitch and the cover stitch separate colors as well. What that allows me to do is put another applique stop in there so it'll feed the frame out and I can see, did everything line up the way that it should have, or do I need to adjust something? Is there a little bit of applique sticking out here that I need to trim out before sewing my cover stitch? And typically a cover stitch is a nice satin stitch like this. With applique you have a lot of options. You can change the material that you're using, you can change the style of tack down stitch that you're using, you can change the color of threads that you're using, and you can achieve a lot of different looks, but the basic structure is the same. You start with a locator stitch, you lay down your material, and then you apply a tack down stitch. So in my software I have that design loaded, but let's go look at setting the color sequence. I'm going to go into color sequence, I'm going to clear all. And the first color, that's the locator stitch, I'm going to stitch that in red. I'm using red fabric to lay down. It also helps show up on camera. If I was doing this and it was just a tackle twill where the edge is slightly exposed, I may choose to do that locator stitch in a color that matches the fabric of the garment rather than the fabric that I'm laying down for the applique. If you get it too close, it does make it a little bit difficult, but that's what I would do. Next, I'm going to put an applique command. So it's going to feed the frame out and it's going to wait for me. So one, and then applique, and I did that just by clicking on that applique button. And then the next color, I'm going to sew in black. That's going to be that tack down. Now, for me, I like to follow up the tack down with an applique. That allows me to double check, make sure everything's lined up, make sure I don't need to trim out any of the material that might be sticking out on a corner or something like that. And then follow that up with black again for the cover stitch. Sometimes you will see that the tack down and cover are in the same color block. That's okay. Some people are braver than I am, and that's completely fine. But the overall structure for this is pretty much going to be the same no matter where it falls in the design. You're going to have your locator stitch, and then your tack down, and then a cover. Typically, I would put an applique command in between those steps. I'm going to hit apply and OK. And now my design is set up, its color sequence is set up, the applique commands are in there, and I am ready to sew my design.